They truly believe, the radical left absolutely and completely believes that society is a mistake, that what the systems we have around us are systems of oppression that must be dismantled, undone, and deconstructed because they have the better idea to be implemented, and then we can actually be harmonious people in utopia, which literally means nowhere, if you look at actually what utopia means. That's what they believe. So right now we're in a discussion on human nature. We should win that conversation. We should win that argument, I should say.
Do you think there's any I think you just answered this actually, but just to highlight it, do you think there's any correlation to the fact that two of the least churched cities in America happen to be Portland and Seattle?
Of course.
There's almost no presence of church witness.
And it would be nice to hear a Republican say that once, wouldn't it? I mean, but look, here's, and I say this is, we have an amazing opportunity to be able to defend right now something that is true. And Paul says it, defend whatsoever is true. I mean, we are called to Christians to call out things that are not correct, not factual, not true in every single part of our life, because everything that you encounter matters. We're told that as Christians. Anytime that something that gets told that is rooted in a lie, that is a tool used by the evil one to try to deceive us and bring us into confusion and chaos. So when people say something like everything's actually wonderful in Portland, you don't understand. 56 days of riot and anarchy. This is actually, it's a summer of love, actually, is what it is.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's a summer of love until they start protesting outside of the mayor's office, right? Which is what they do. And so, yes, there's a direct correlation, and we have to understand that this country that was founded, it wasn't an accident. And that's a really important thing that we have to teach our kids. Unlike other kind of civilization toppling and just the constant cycle, if you will. We are going to control this piece of land and we're going to put it over with our tradition. Our country is so different than that. We don't teach our young people. This was a deliberative process of reading, reflecting, praying, and fasting of what do we want to create? And this was founded. This wasn't something that we backed into like, oh my gosh, what if we just like have this free speech thing? I came up with it and everyone can say whatever they want. Everyone's gonna own guns, and like Ben Franklin, like this country's gonna be lit, right? Like this is gonna be great. Right? No, there's a reason for all of this, right? This wasn't some sort of juvenile experiment in trying to have people indulge themselves. This was a study of Mesopotamia and Athens and Greece and Rome and Aristotle and Plato and Aquinas and Descartes and Hume and Locke. And you said, okay, here's what they got wrong, here's what they got right, and the Enlightenment understood this, and Locke theorized very simply that, yes, we have natural law, and from natural law we have natural rights, and then they said, well, what if it's a theocracy? They said, that won't work because then you're a state-run religion, actually make people less likely to go to church, so let's have ideas that are actually built upon that of Christianity, the Bible, the greatest book ever to exist in the history of the world. We like that, and everyone in our population is basically understands this is the moral order, but we want to have a pluralistic society and the freedom of speech, because good ideas must be defended, not be just shoved down people's throats, because if we just say this is what it is, people are going to find a way to disconnect from it, because that's human nature. They want to challenge and question. We know that from the Enlightenment, and we know that from basically the problems that the Catholic Church had with trying to have state-run religion. The founders didn't want that, but they still wanted the moral order. And that's why in our birth certificate, the Declaration of Independence says the laws of nature and nature's God, very explicitly, where it said, you know what, King George, this whole tyranny and autocracy thing, not so fast, my friend. We have a better idea from ideas that are derived from the law of Abraham and Moses and the tradition of the Bible that was fulfilled by the covenant of Jesus Christ. We're going to try out freedom of speech, protect our family, rights to privacy, states' rights, and guess what? If we get something wrong, we can course correct it, because we don't have to worry about your tyranny, one-size-fits-all centralized control. We have a republic, if we can keep it. Let's see what happens. This was the biggest risk in human history.
That's right.
I want you to understand, there was no precedent to this. It wasn't, they didn't have, they had very little to no civilization precedent. They took this risk and they said, we actually trust our people who were freedom-seeking pilgrims who brought everything across the Atlantic Ocean. Many of them died. Even more of them paid a huge price in more ways than one. Go forth, try out this liberty thing. And oh my goodness, it spread like wildfire. Every country that has civil society, they should say, thanks America, we owe you. We started it, we rebelled against tyranny for a reason, for a moral good and a moral government. And we should be proud of that every single day. And for the societal deconstructionists and the arsonists that try to say this bitter lie They say, well, America was founded on slavery. And if I may, Jack, go into this.
You're quoting now, who is that?
Nicole Hannah-Jones.
Yes.
She has a very perplexing
I just want to make
aesthetic.
sure we give credit where
She has red hair. I just don't quite. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No.
I want to give credit where credit is due. When complete rubbish gets spewed from the paper of record, I want to make sure I get it right. Unlike them, because they don't get it right. So Nicole Hannah-Jones, she is on a pathological campaign to make sure your kids hate America. And so Nicole Hannah-Jones, red hair, see her on TV, always talking about how awful white people are and how awful our country is. She's a bit of racist. I actually call her racist because I think racism is hatred of anyone of any skin color at any time. I think it is sinful and hateful and awful, and it is a sin. That's simple. Okay.
Yeah.
So she says that our country was founded in 1619, the first year that slaves came to our country. This is not correct. It's not. So if you actually look at the founding of our country, 1776, this great leap forward, 2,000 years forward, derived, of course, from the teachings of Athens and the combination of Jerusalem, Aristotle, Plato, Descartes, Aquinas, Locke, all the best practices put into one, authored by who? Thomas Jefferson, very important, I'll get back to him in a second, who says, laws of nature and nature's God. What happens in 1777? First state ever to abolish slavery, Vermont, says that's it, we're done. Why? We're inspired by this document. They abolished slavery. We were inspired on the abolition of slavery. When they were putting together the Constitution, it was never a conversation, ever. Don't let the people, the New York Times or Nicole Hannah-Jones tell you any different.
That's
it was
right.
never a question of whether or not we would have slavery. It was how we were going to get rid of this sinful practice. It was around for thousands of years. It was around before Christ. It was around after Christ. It is a sin. So our country was founded. Constitutional Convention, 1787. In 1787, George Washington says no new slaves at all, no slavery in the Northwest Territories. So anything forward, no slavery at all. They won't teach your kids that. Then, moving forward, in the Constitution, you can read it yourself, 20-year moratorium on the slave trade. You got 20 years, southern states, then it is coming to an end. Reappears Thomas Jefferson, who actually introduced a bill in the early 1790s in the Virginia House of Commons, who said that slavery was an awful practice, I want to get rid of it. Now, mind you, it was probably one of the most perplexing pieces of hypocrisy in history because he himself was a slave owner, but he still was arguing for a moral good societally, failed in the Virginia House eventually. Eventually, of course, it succeeded. We saw in the 1790s, almost every single northern state abolished slavery. By the time 1807 happened, Thomas Jefferson had his time to shine. Thomas Jefferson, third president of the United States of our country. That 20 years, tick, 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 in the Constitution, right? They did that as a bargain with the southern states. Thomas Jefferson, on the first day, he was legally able to abolish the incoming of any new slaves into the United States of America 20 years into our founding. That is something we should be proud of. We were founded from the moment that we started that said that this was wrong and this is evil. Now, mind you, it wasn't a perfect history. It went through decades of ups and downs, and we went through a bloody civil war. But show me another country that sacrificed so much, brother against brother and father against son, to accomplish something that what? The churches were screaming in the pews and the pulpits, and Thaddeus Stevens was inspired by a pastor to go to Congress and say, slavery is anti-American. Our founders said it. Thaddeus Stevens said it. We fought this bitter civil war, and Abraham Lincoln kept the republic together on this unionist idea that I think America's best day can be ahead of us, where all men are equal and free. Fast forward all the way to Frederick Douglass, where he says that we need to abolish slavery. Why? Because I'm so inspired by the Declaration of Independence. He was an abolitionist, a black Republican who understood it. Go all the way fast forward to the great Martin Luther King Jr., who himself lived a very, let's say, he had questionable moral decisions, but he was arguing for what? A moral good. Why do I keep on saying this? Because people can act sinfully personally, but argue for something righteously publicly, and they should be remembered for what they did good publicly, not for what they did less than desirably privately. It's a very important thing. People say, well, we got to get rid of all these people, but dare you forget what they sacrificed for our country. And Martin Luther King said in that beautiful speech, I come here to cash in the check of the promissory note of the Declaration of Independence. Yes. He didn't say that this document was racist. He didn't say we got to shred it from its roots. He says, this document says all men are created equal, and I'm telling you, Congress, to pass the Civil Rights Act. From that moment that we started this country to the Civil Rights Act of the 1960s, it was a constant theme, a march and a progression to be better. And isn't that what we do every single day in our own life, to try to be better today than we were yesterday? We cannot forget our history. We should be proud of it. No other country has pursued a moral good like the United States of America. Be proud of this country.